So as we now get into the nitty-gritty, the meat of the process of yibbum, the process of levirate marriage, we're going to look at the status of a woman of a widow, the widow of a childless man who is eligible to have yibbum performed by her brother-in-law. In other words, who's waiting for yibbum, or perhaps waiting for chalitza. She has the choice. She can perform chalitza and become a free woman, or she can be married to her brother-in-law. But we've already said that this status of Yevamot, the status of someone waiting for yibbum, is triggered by the death of her husband. So it happens automatically. As soon as her husband dies, if childless, she becomes in some way connected to her husband's brother or her husband's brothers. And this even before yibbum or chalitza happens. And this woman who is connected in some way before yibbum or chalitza, or for that matter, ma'amar, is called a shomeret yavam. Shomeret yavam literally means someone who's waiting for yibbum. And we'll see from the Mishnah that her status is in some way ambiguous or ambivalent. She has, in some ways, she's like a free woman, and in some ways she isn't. And that's where we pick up in the third Mishnah of the fourth chapter. Shomeret Yavam, a Shomeret Yavam, someone who's waiting for yibbum. Shenaflu la nechasim, who acquires some property. Who does the property belong to? Or who has rights over the property? Because if she were properly married, and again, this is the time of the Mishnah now, in the time of the Mishnah, her husband would have to agree for her to be able to dispose of the property. But she's not married. She's merely waiting for yibbum. What happens if she acquires property? Modim Beit Shammai uBeit Hillel shemucheret. Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel agree she can sell it. Venotenet, she can give it away. Vekayam, her act is legally valid, i.e., she is responsible for her financial affairs before yibbum. And that is different from a status of a regular married woman in the time of the Mishnah. But maybe it's not so simple. Meta, mayasu, if she died. So we have a shomeret yabam. She's waiting for yibbum. Her husband, unfortunately, has died. She's got this property. Remember, we've always said that the Mishnah likes playing around with these boundary conditions. So now let's imagine that she dies too. Meta, she dies. Mayasu, biktuvata uva nechasim hanichnasim veyotzin ima. If she died, what is going to be done with her ketubah and with the property that goes in and goes out with her? So her ketubah is the financial settlement which her husband owes her on divorce, or, by the way, on death as well as on divorce. She has first claim on his estate on the ketubah. And the possessions, well, these are properties that might have come into the marriage with her and perhaps will go out with her. Beit Shammai Omrim. Beit Shammai Omrim. Beit Shammai say, Yachaloku Yorsheh Habalim Yorsheh Ha'av. Beit Shammai say the heirs of her husband are to share it with the heirs of her father. Now, we don't quite know what Beit Shammai mean when they say Yorsheh Habal, the heirs of the husband. Are we talking about the deceased husband, or are we talking about the future husband, the Yabam? It's not clear. We certainly know that if she were just a regular unmarried person, her husband would inherit, her father would inherit her. So if she was completely single, her father would inherit her. And if she were married, her husband would inherit her. So Beit Shammai seems to be saying, look, she's in some indeterminate status between marriage and singledom. And so the heirs of her father, the heirs of her husband, and the heirs of her father split her possessions on her death. It's not quite clear what her status is. And And that we might be talking, by the way, about the previous or the next husband. It's not clear. It's not clear. And Beit Hillel have a different view. Uveit Hillel omrim, nechasim b'chezkatan. The property remains b'chezkatan. That means it can mean with those who are assumed to hold it, but lachazok means actually to hold. And I think what the Mishnah is talking about here is the property remains with those who hold it. Uveit Hillel omrim nechasim b'chezkatan. Beit Hillel say the property remains with the people who hold it. Ketubah b'chezkat yorshei habal. So the ketubah remains in the possession of the heirs of the husband. So the ketubah comes from the husband. The ketubah is essentially a claim on the husband's estate to support the wife. So the ketubah comes from the husband's estate. If it's going to remain with those who are holding it, it's going to remain with the husband's heirs, because the ketubah actually sits with the husband's possessions. She hasn't claimed it yet. The property that goes in and out with her, this is property that she brings in or takes out and brings into the marriage or deals with during the marriage. B'chezkat yorsha'av, remain in the possession of the heirs of her father, because properly speaking, that portion of her estate will be inherited by her father. So Beit Hillel split the property, not equally, but they split it according to effectively its legal, let's say its legal roots. And then the Mishnah goes on. This is the next Mishnah in the chapter, but clearly the subject matter carries on. Knasa, let's say he married her, so she's no longer a shomeret yavam waiting for yibbum or chalitza, but it sounds like yibbum has taken place now, and she's now married to the new husband. Knasa, he married her. That means that she is his wife for all practical purposes. In other words, she's now legally his wife. And that means, for example, that if she dies, her husband inherits her. It means that if her husband wants to divorce her, he would need to write a regular get. He would need to give her her ketubah. In other words, she's properly married just as any other married woman would be. With one exception, uvilvad, shetehei ketuvata al nichsei ba'ala harishon. But if she's divorced, her ketubah remains a claim on her, or for that matter, if her husband dies, the new husband dies, the ketubah is a claim on the first husband's estate, not on the second husband's estate. So in other words, I think the Mishnah is saying, look, when she was married first time round, she received the ketubah from her first husband's estate, and she has a right to that. I guess she carries that right into the second marriage. And if she's divorced, then those funds support her as a divorced woman. So I suppose, practically speaking, it might be cheaper to divorce a woman who you've married via yibbum than a woman you've married in a normal sense, because in the normal sense, of course, the husband has to pay for the ketubah, whereas in this case, the yabam, well, if he divorces his new wife, he wouldn't have to pay for the ketubah. And then the Mishnah concludes, slightly changing subject, mitzvah b'gadol liyabam. The commandment of yibbum is on the eldest brother. We've looked at this Mishnah before, in fact. Lo ratza mahachin al kol ha'achin. If the eldest brother doesn't wish, then they pass in turn to all the other brothers. Lo ratzu, maybe they don't wish, maybe none of them wish. Chozrin etzel gadol, they go back to the eldest. Ve'omrim lo, and they say to him, Alecha mitzvah or chalotz or yabem. The commandment is on you, either perform chalitza or perform yibbum. As to say, look, it's not possible, it's not desirable, we do not accept the fact that the status of this widow is indeterminate. You have to do something to resolve it. Either accept her or don't. Either we do chalitza or we do yibbum, but this status of shomeret yavam, waiting for yibbum, this sort of indeterminate in-between status that we looked at the beginning of the beginning of the third Mishnah, we can't let that stay kind of long term. You, the brothers, have to make a decision, and if none of you will make a decision, it's then the responsibility of the eldest.